welcome to the Bergamo Landscape Festival conference or seminar, webinar, I Maestri del Paesaggio. We're coming to you from all over the world and not just Bergamo. Obviously this year, sadly, we can't all travel to Bergamo, which makes us all extremely sad. But we're doing the next best thing and we're bringing everybody together. My name is Annie Guilfoyle. I'm really honoured to be part of the Archetypos team this year and being responsible for helping to choose speakers and generally helping out. So I'll be moderating today. We have 4 speakers today. We have Martin Rein-Cano, we have Fergus Garrett from Great Dixter, we have Schmidt from Germany, and we have Charlotte Rowe from the UK. If you have questions for any of those speakers during the presentations, you can use your Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Next to that, there's also a box that says interpretation, and that way you can choose to have your interpreter into your language, well, basically it's English, Italian or Russian at the moment, so you can choose. We have a few thank yous to say also before we get started. One is to thank the company based in Milan called MyPay, who are helping us all this year, helping I Maestri del Paesaggio and the Landscape Festival by providing the interpreters, which is really wonderful. We also want to thank Elena Markantintova, who's in St. Petersburg, and she's also helping us out and bringing lots of wonderful Russian friends together to hear today's webinar. So it is really sad that we're not sitting in the piazza in Bergamo, but we are going to have a wonderful afternoon. There are 2 more webinars coming up, one next Thursday and one on Friday. They're almost sold out. So if you want to take part in those, the one on Thursday is with Mario Bonicelli, and that's all in Italian. And then the one on Friday is like today, and we have 4 different speakers. So have a look on the website, but if you want to take part, you really do need to book now, because they are pretty much sold out. Okay, so I think that's all the things that I need to say, apart from welcome to everybody, and we're going to have a wonderful afternoon. So our first speaker is Martin Rein-Cano, who is in Berlin. Martin, are you there somewhere? Can we see you?
Here, I am here. I'm happy to be here.
Hello, Martin. Hello, Martin. Welcome. Now, Martin, you were a speaker in Bergamo last year. Was that your first visit to Bergamo, to the conference? Can you hear me, Martin?
Yes, it was actually. It was really amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
yes.
you made quite an impact.
It's a little bit.
Yeah. There's a little bit of delay, Martin.
There is a little bit of cracking okay. in the. But I'm sorry, so I didn't understand you fully. So
okay.
Sorry,
so
Annie.
I was saying that last year you were one of the speakers at the conference.
Yes. Yes, I was. Yes.
And you made quite an impact with your talk, your presentation, looking at your work and how you work. And of course, this year you were supposed to be designing the Piazza Vecchia in Bergamo for the festival. So sadly, we were not doing that. The square has been decorated and has been designed, but it's not your project. And we were all waiting in anticipation to see what you were going to do, because we knew that it was going to be something very extraordinary and very different.
Hopefully, let's see.
So, Martin, are we hopefully going to see that next year at the conference? We'll hopefully see your piazza.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So this afternoon, Martin.
Yes, we will for sure.
Great. This afternoon, Martin, you're going to be talking to us about a particular project.
Yes, I mean, in general, I'm going to talk about, let's say, something that we've been working with as a strategy, a formal and a programmatic strategy is working with graphics, to take graphics as a starting point of organization, but also of aesthetics of space, as a there's a continuation of a landscape tradition of painting and drawing as part of the practice, let's say. You know, I mean, it's not. We call the English landscape style the picturesque. No, it's the idea that the picture is actually it's a walkable picture in the end. So we think of our work sometimes as walkable drawings, and so I see myself kind of in that tradition somehow, and so I'm showing some old work that we did 20 years ago, and some pretty recent from end of last year.
Okay. And before we start your presentation, I should mention, of course, that you're based in Berlin, and your company is called Topotek. Topotek 1, is that correct?
Correct.
Topotek. Okay, brilliant. So would you like to share your screen and we'll start your presentation?
So can the presentation be seen?
Not yet. It's not happening yet.
Okay, I don't know why, but it worked last time.
Yeah. Always happens. It works well in rehearsal, and then when you actually come to do it. So you go to share screen at the bottom. There we go. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for helping me.
Okay.
All right. Very good. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor to be speaking to you all. For all of us, it's repetitive, but still is a kind of a strange situation, kind of being alone in the mass, let's say. But let's see how much of a spirit can be saved also through these new ways of communication. However, what I'm talking about, as I started my introduction after Annie's question, I've been always interested in the ideas of landscape, let's say, maybe also because I always been it was very tricky for me and important for me to define the position of my profession as landscape architect also towards architecture. You know, my motivation for landscape architecture always was more coming from art and architecture than maybe from the idea of gardening in terms of plants and things like that. So, and one of the questions that I always had, it was makes us as landscape architects actually different to the architects. Obviously plants would be maybe one of the most obvious things, but I was looking into more abstract ways of defining the difference. And one difference I think that is pretty relevant is that when we talk about buildings, we talk always about an inside and an outside. We talk always about a hollow mass. And when we talk about landscape, we speak about, let's say, a relief, or if we want also kind of a film, like a very thin layer, actually, that lies between Earth and the universe, exposed, let's say, to the elements and to infinity. And so I was always fascinated with this very thin layer that happens to be a place of action. And so this is one part of the story. The other part of the story is how the graphical coding, playing, let's say, with something that has been developed as a syntax for understanding of certain orders, of traffic orders or other orders, how this syntax can, let's say, be misused for other purposes that are not related maybe with traffic, but also how to create, let's say, confusion in an almost Dada kind of way, ignoring, let's say, the syntax and creating that way, let's say, a certain new poetry out of it. So the first project that is actually also the very first project that we did after I founded the office in '96 is actually, this was our office. You see in the back the television tower. So we still are in the same address, by the way. We just moved around in the building several times, growing. So we never changed the address since 24 years. And so we experimented. We had this beautiful terrace, and we started to experiment with materials. Also, the only work that I did build myself. That's the reason it's also not very well built. So we not only did plan it, but we literally placed the graphics on the terrace. And what happens is actually something that has to do with, let's say, the translocation of elements. let's say it's a very common artistic strategy that you take elements and put them in another context, and doing so you create, let's say, a certain excitement and a certain surprise, let's say. So people were, when they came to our terrace, they were asking if maybe this is a helicopter place, or what kind of signage is that? Who is actually reading that information? Is it some airplanes or some extraterrestrial visitors or whatever? So what happens is actually that it's an old trick from gardening or from big parks. If you think of the big mirror pools in Versailles or in other Baroque parks, the idea that you get heaven somehow integrated into your project, doing things that are actually too big on ground, create this kind of relation to our roof, let's say, and to this. And I think this is probably the most important difference to architecture, is the idea that you are constantly and totally exposed, and that heaven is always an excitement to look at. And there's a reason I'm not so fond of perennials, because then you have to look down on the soil. So I'm happy if I can admire the clouds or the sky. So there's a reason the garden is called Sky Garden. Yeah. No, it doesn't work for whatever reason. Can you still hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes. Are you
I
there?
don't know why my presentation is not wanting to continue. I don't know why. I'm going to no, the whole computer actually. It's still not quite polygon.
It's still showing the same slide.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not reacting to my
Okay, maybe come out of screen share and go back in again. That might help.
Sorry about that. I keep on talking a little bit and we try to solve the problem.
Okay.
So and then the other thing that was interesting to us, we have to quit Keynote, so we will need a little break. So another reason for the fascination for working with these kind of graphical elements is also this idea working with landscape has to do obviously with time, no? Because you always have to wait for things to develop in very different architecture that usually can be is more of a ready-made. What we do in the landscape requires time, no? And I always thought that this is a bit of a problem in terms of, it still doesn't work. Can you try it again? And I was always looking also for, let's say, things that we can do that that don't need time, that can be done really as ready-made, because I thought it was too not good to have, when it comes for us to work in the public space, we can't say that in very fast times that the slow was. I think that we have to also provide, of course, further on as a slow results or slow solutions. That's we have to provide fast solutions. So this graphical way of working actually creates a certain velocity that I really like. So let's see if that works now.
It's not, we're not seeing full screen, but we also
doesn't work.
Yeah, we're back to the beginning.
Sorry, but it's not working.
No,
I don't know. I'm sorry.
What about did you say that you also had it as a PDF as opposed to Keynote?
We have a PDF of that. No, we only have the Keynote, because but it never happened to us because we also have movies in it, no? But maybe I have to go away and come back. Maybe
Okay,
just quit and come back.
Okay. Do you want us to carry on and go on to Fergus and then come back to you?
Sorry?
Do you want to? Would you like us to start the presentation with Fergus and then you come back in after Fergus?
Yes, I'm quite happy to do that as long as tenure is, Annie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Martin, can you hear me?
Not really. Very cracking. I hear
Yeah,
every second word only.
don't know
Can you
why.
hear me?
I can hear you, but the line is very distorted and very crackly.
Sorry?
The line, the sound is not very good. The sound is not good.
No. No, let me, you know, I'm going to go to hang up and I'm going to join again. Maybe it's better then.
Shall we continue with the second speaker and then come back to you?
Yes, please. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Right.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. Yes.
That's all right.
Yes,
That's
please.
okay. These things happen. We'll bring Fergus on and then we'll come back to you. Did you stop screen sharing?
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. So Fergus, right.
Ja, ein bisschen später.
Kannst du das? Warum ist jetzt?
Martin, can you please mute your screen? Okay. Fergus, are you going to step in and save the day?
Yes, I will do. So I think if that's all right,
It's all right with me. I think Martin needs to sort out some technical issues. So if you're ready, then we'll proceed with you, and then we'll come back to Martin in second place.
Sure, Annie. Yes,
I can. So our second speaker today is the wonderful, amazing Fergus Garrett, who's a dear friend. And Fergus, you don't need very much introduction because you're so well known. But Fergus, you came out to Bergamo on 2 occasions, I think, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah. So you were presenting, I think, 1 year, and then you were doing a workshop with at Valfredda with Mauro Crescini, weren't you?
That's right.
Yeah.
I thought it's an extraordinary place, and it's full of extraordinary people, especially at this time where it's a sort of bustling hotbed of creativity, which I love so much of it. And of course, the food and the wine is.
I know. It's very, very difficult not being there this September. I have to say, it's the 10th anniversary, which I forgot to say at the very beginning. So it's a big deal this year. It's very exciting, and yeah, it's a thing on my annual calendar. And of course, always every year, some Dixter students and gardeners come out as well.
Yeah, really fantastic experience.
So before you carry on with your presentation, how have things been at Dixter over the last few months? Just tell us how you've coped with the situation we're in.
Well, we're very fortunate in that we're a wildish garden, so it can we can be rough around the edges, and it still looks charming and atmospheric. And so, obviously, we had to send a lot of staff home, and just only now we're bringing them back one by one. But we've managed to cope okay, and it was a balance between bringing the staff back and finances, and we're just pulling through this, and just conscious of the fact that. We're quite fortunate at Dixter because of the name and the brand and so on. And there are sort of places that haven't got that sort of infrastructure behind them that'll just be, under really difficult times. And we're all in this together, you see.
Yeah.
So I feel very strongly that we've all got to help
everybody.
each other.
Sorry, everybody. Sorry. We have just a little communication for Italian people because the translation doesn't really working. So I have to make an Italian announce so everybody can follow the translation because we have too many people that can't really hear the Italian translation. So 5 seconds, fine. Quindi, per chiunque fosse italiano, abbiamo notato che Zoom non ha l'italiano come traduzione, quindi dovete selezionare la lingua spagnola cliccando sul pulsante con il mondo con sottoscritto interpretazione e cliccando su spagnolo sentirete la traduzione italiana. Il problema è che Zoom non permette di selezionare italiano, quindi abbiamo spostato la traduzione italiana su spagnolo. Quindi preghiamo tutti gli italiani che vogliono sentire la traduzione di spostarsi su spagnolo cliccando il bottone del mondo con sottoscritto interpretazione. Ok, spero che tutti abbiano sentito.
Wo mache ich Sharing jetzt?
Possiamo riprendere con la webinar. So, Annie, we're fine. I made my announce. I hope that everybody understood me. And okay, so
right. we now have a situation where Martin is back. So Martin, we were sort of continuing with Fergus, but are you back and ready to go?
Yes, I am.
And
Let's see.
And it's working.
I changed the computer, so let's hope this is better. That works better now. I think it was my problem. So the sound is better. However,
Fergus, are you okay if we come back to you?
Fine, absolutely.
sorry.
Okay, right.
No problem at all. Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's go.
Hi, Fergus. Thank you. And sorry again. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. And the sound is much better.
Very good. All right, there we go. So I was talking about the relationship between understanding the landscape, let's say, as a layer between universe and Earth, let's say. And so there was one motivation. Another motivation was to misuse a certain syntax, a certain information from a foreign world and transport it to another world. And the third one, let's say, was the immediate result, the instant soup kind of quality of this strategy. You know, us being a very poetic profession that is always kind of trying to play on the issue that things that we do are worthwhile and require time, etc. What makes sense. But I think that sometimes we also have to offer really fast results to certain places. And so, so these are the three elements that I'm interested in. The third element, maybe, and this is also a very old project, as you can see, from 1996, same year as the other one, was, let's say, the programming, the way of understanding that the infrastructural landscape is as much landscape as, let's say, the beautiful bucolic planty landscape, and how to deal with this landscape, let's say, in a positive way, but also how not let the infrastructure conquer our public spaces, but to, let's say, start a certain process of sharing between different uses instead of having monofunctional stories happening. And so this project is a parking ground, and in the same time, on the same ground, there is a playground on top of it. And this is also the beginning of another story that we've been working since over 20 years now, and is what I call the aesthetic of conflicts. That public space is always a negotiation between different interest groups, and the best thing that can happen is actually that there is a peaceful conflict between these different groups, but that the public space allows this peaceful conflict also to happen. So in that case, it was really interesting. It was a housing block in East Berlin, in Marzahn. That is a monoblock area built in the times of the German Democratic Republic, so a typical Eastern European monoblock structure. And what was interesting that this was a result, let's say, of an urban design of rationalism that actually didn't allow conflicts. Everything was ordered. You know, you had big roads just for cars. It was not meant to be walking. You know, it was like the houses were really spread around. So that kind of idea of clashing. So we offer this place as a place of clash, where, let's say, you can also exercise conflicts. You can learn how to deal with conflicts without, let's say, killing each other. And that makes you more resilient, is what we believe when it comes to bigger conflicts. So what happened here is that the kids then actually, when there was someone parking maybe on a place where they wanted to play, they rang the ring if they knew who was the owner of the car, asking the guy to come down and move his car because he was standing then on the playground. You know? And so this idea that the city and the public space doesn't have just one owner, but there's a lot of people who actually have a certain ownership over the space, and that they have to share. That makes also the public space in cities so incredibly interesting, and much more interesting as they would be if they would just have one single use. So this is the third story to the two that I told before. So the motivation or the tradition of landscape architecture as a tradition of the picturesque, of the idea of the image, of drawing, of painting, of working with the landscape in a sense like a sculptor or like a painter or a draftsman in our case. The motivation of playing with a different syntax, and the motivation of misusing, let's say, infrastructural elements to make them, to civilize them down into useful spaces for all participants, including children. So there was a very crucial project for us. I would say this and the terrace are kind of the origins of many projects that happened afterwards, also of Superkiln, that is probably our best known project till today. Same story, 2002, or similar story, a playground in which actually the lines that are drawn on the surface are actually not following any rule. They are just, actually we took them from a flipper, from one of these play machines that we used to have in the 80s, you know, with a ball that would run through a surface. So we took the image from there and translocated it here. So, and the idea is again that the rules are not given, but rules is something that we have to discuss about to find out which is the best way to do them. And it actually encourages especially children to feel that there is a place for them to decide about things, and that not everything is given in the place they've been thrown in when they get born into this world. So the idea of embracing these kind of conflicts, also to embrace dialogue and social interaction. And in the end, also what we did in Superkiln follows more or less the same story. So how to continue an idea of associative working and of discussion about how things should be done instead of having everything set and ordered. You know? And then another project that was prior to Superkiln, and if you know Superkiln, you will recognize a similar formal strategy. This is in West Berlin, in Spandau, in the northwest of Berlin. You know, in the beginning of the 2000s, Berlin was in a big crisis, so that no one wanted to build or to buy any property here, so that the city started to have this kind of temporary projects all over the city. And this is one of them. Now it's going to be a school. It's already been taken away. It used to be a factory beforehand, and we had a very little budget. So and then on the so there were two chances for this plot. One is that you just close it up and wait till economical situations are better, or you do this kind of in-between solutions that in the end are often much more interesting than the final solutions that happen to be around a lot. So because you are much more free to experiment and to play, as people don't expect it to last forever. So this one lasted for 15 years maybe. Yeah? And here it was, the idea of drawing in that case was also playing with height lines, the idea of using optical illusion as a way of also tradition of the garden. Let's say, if you think of Versailles again, or if you think of the English landscape garden, how we play with illusions, with size. If you think of the folies in most of the English parks, how they are actually always out of scale, they're always too small to make the property also look bigger, how the lakes are laid out in the parks so that you never see their end. So the idea of implementing these things of optical illusions just with another strategy using lines and asphalt. And again, actually also instead of having the landscape profession as always the antidote to the bad urban city, to think of landscape architecture actually as another branch of the city, and also recognizing, let's say, the beauty of the beast, the beauty of the ugly, the beauty of the asphalt, the beauty of the graphical implementations. And what happens is actually that, and that shows that I'm right. I don't know if it's true, but that's however, it's a coincidence. Our photographer was there when this girl actually started to make that space her space. So if we do a playground that is fully equipped with all purposes and swings and slides, there is not much space for the kid to develop their own games. You know, they just slide or swing, and in that case, and in the urban context, it's very hard to find places of freedom for kids to develop their own ideas. So I like drawing. This girl seemed to be like to draw as well, so that she actually continues my design. And so my design is actually quoting Umberto Eco, una opera aperta, an open piece of art that actually can be continued instead of being closed and cannot be continued. Yeah, and then and all sorts of things that happen. People start to play ball in a strange way, and I don't have pictures of it, but it became the main remote control racing car place of Berlin. So there were people gathering there with their remote cars, having this kind of speed contests for their little vehicles. So this kind of also surprise use, you know, that you don't do something that is set for what it's meant to be used, but can be actually invented. The use can be actually follow, or this guy that actually followed the lines with his skating and whatever. This is next. This part is actually durable. This was a kind of a step well into this former industrial canal, and in the back you see the temporary space. The transformation, let's say, of these industrial areas into housing and other places. So this project is the freight station, the former freight station of Hanover, that has been translocated to another place. It's in the center of the city, more or less, and it was bought by an investor and transformed into this kind of cultural, it's not a shopping mall. It has an Italian supermarket in it. It has a jumping hall, you know, with these trampolines. It has cafes, it has restaurants, it has different clubs, social clubs, etc. So the question was how to develop the front. That was kind of the public square. And again, one of the problems is the conflict of interests. This place needed parking because it couldn't build any garage or anything underground. So as everything was a given structure, so we were again in the situation where we had to combine these different issues. And again, we started to work with elements from the industrial or infrastructural aesthetical elements from the city. So we have asphalt, we have lines, and combined again skating area. You know, skating is quite problematic to be placed in the city as it's quite loud, and neighbors always complain. But this place is very loud anyway, in between trains and heavy roads. So we combined, let's say, the entrance into this new cultural shopping mall, as I call it, and a parking and a playground for youngsters. So that again, we have this kind of combination of different uses, implementing, let's say, a graphical language as a transition also between these different worlds. No, it's and in that case, actually, the graphics also went not only outside but also into the building. Here you see how the parking is organized as a continuation of the same story. And also the trees, we painted the trees as well. So everything becomes coded somehow. And we work very close together with the architects, a very good firm here from Berlin called AFF. And so that then in the end, the architecture, let's say the line and the graphical qualities of the architecture and even the color of the architecture followed our ideas that we developed for the public space. And as you can see, the main corridor that crosses this new building actually continues. The asphalt and the graphic continues. So we have this kind of inside out between the public space outside the building and inside the building. I don't have a picture for that, I'm sorry. In our homepage, there are some, I hope. So, and the last project I'm going to show to you is a little workshop I did in Melbourne. I was in Melbourne, I think it's 2018. So it was winter in Berlin, but summer down there. And it was interesting. They had this kind of leftover space on the highway that goes between the city and the airport of Melbourne. And I said, well, one way also to use graphics is actually sometimes also to create an approximation to a place. You know, a place when we come to work, we always would say that context is very relevant. You know, the genius loci of a place is incredibly important to us, etc., etc. But we barely take our time really to get to know places, especially when these places are actually don't have, let's say, the beautiful patina, the romantic patina that we usually would prefer, let's say, but it's just a dump place or a dirty place or a garbage place or whatever. So what we did is this kind of emotional drawing in which every one of the students had to draw a line defining, let's say, an approximation to what this site could tell us, let's say, creating with it an excitement and also starting to understand this site in a better way. So we use this chalk spray, and every one of the students, as I said, started to draw. You can see there's one student drawing a line, a white line in the back. So everyone had to do a line, let's say following a little bit in an associative way, but also reacting towards the what they would found if there would be a plant or something, creating, let's say, a map, a one-to-one map. You know, when you do a map, you have meridians, and I don't know what the other ones are called, the ones in the other direction, yeah, the vertical one. So you create a grid, actually sometimes to understand a place. That's the way we map and create scale to things, yeah. And what was interesting as well is that then obviously this place is probably washed out as this chalk, but sometimes the discussion of places also happens in a kind of afterlife, you know. So it's not only what is implemented in the public space as a reality, it's also what is implemented in the public space, let's say, as part of a discussion in the internet that we also are having now. So places become not only places as places themselves, as physical places, but as an imaginatory. And let's say from the one-to-one drawing, because of drones, because drones became this kind of element that we can use as normal people. It's not anymore anything that is only. Sag mal, könnt ihr ein bisschen leise sein? Sorry. So then you suddenly have a two-dimensional image that is suddenly in scale. You know, what was out of scale before, you know, and not really recognizable, suddenly we see from above. And the view from above through Google Maps and other techniques became something very common. So we are very used to use our iPhones, you know, and look from above wherever we are. So this idea of playing with this was interesting in that workshop, I thought. And but without the drone, probably wouldn't have been as interesting in the end. No? So so this is the last experiment that I have to show you that we've been doing in that with these strategies of drawing in the landscape. That's supposed to be a movie. Let's say if it, yeah, sorry, it was moving. Not? Yes, it is. Yeah. All right, grazie mille. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Would you like to come out of screen share just so that we can have a quick question and answer session? I just want to see. Okay, right. Okay, can you hear me, Martin?
Yes, very well.
Okay,
Annie.
great. Okay, so a quick question really before we carry on. Your work is very graphic. There's a strong emphasis on materials and hard materials. What do you think about the relationship between soft and hard landscaping? And does your work come in under criticism for not having more soft, you know, soft landscaping and planting? How would you describe, you know, that relationship, and what's your thought on that?
Yeah, no, of course, I've been many times also confronted with this issue. No, I don't really care because I live, let's say, on another universe in that way. I mean, I've been never a plant lover. I like plants. I mean, everyone likes plants. I don't think that there are many plant haters actually, but I've never been a plant lover. So it's just my trajectory is just different. That doesn't mean that the plant, I think that I wonderfully work with plant and beautiful projects, no doubt, that I also enjoy and admire. But I always been interested also in, let's say, more the edge of the profession. I was always looking for, let's say, more abstract familiarities between the past and what we do now, and also expanding, let's say, the repertoire, you know, because if you only have plants, you can't answer every question, you know, when it comes to the diversity of projects that we have to work with. And especially when we have to work with infrastructure, I think that we have to kind of, you know, we have to tame the beast with its own brutality, and because the plant doesn't survive the brutality of the infrastructure. So I believe that it's actually our way to deal with these issues. But again, this is one of the strategies we apply. We are also kind of multilingual in reality. We have 40 nationalities working in the office. So and also we work worldwide. So we work also in different fields. We do buildings, we do urban design, we do landscapes. So that we are not kind of committed to one language or one strategy. So that we are also very practical, and we have projects that also have the plant in its center. We've been recently developing a master plan for Tegel. This is the airport in Berlin that will be closed this November. That was supposed to be closed already 10 years ago. So this project of ours is not that recent, but it's looking, for example, how to implement new tree planting following climate change. And so what we're proposing is, instead of having, let's say, singular tree rows, where we have these clones repeating, that is actually coming from the Baroque, this idea of the avenue, the perfect soldier-like avenue, into, let's say, have more a collection of different species, and also using it as an experimenting field for other streets in the city. So this is a very infrastructural project on one side, very pragmatic. So because if you have one individual, one tree that is sick, you don't have the whole population of trees becoming sick, but you can kind of have other trees that then create also other streetscapes and give also a character to that special place. So we have, I think, 40 different species all over the streets. And if it would be a traditional master plan, you would probably have maybe 5-6 species.
Right.
So again, for me, I'm not ideological,
and
but actually very free spirited and free minded. And this is one strategy that we've been working with, but obviously not only. Our portfolio has over 100 projects that are, most of them actually also not plant driven, but full of green.
Yeah. But the ones that you're showing us are the ones, this is obviously a sort of a design or a style very close to your heart. You know, this is something that you find very exciting. Yeah.
Let's put it like that. It's very exciting, and it's something that only we do, and we also kind of put it in the world, you know. Right. So I don't need to show something that 100 other people are doing the same, you know. So because we do that too, by the way, but maybe there are others that do it better. So this stuff, we're the best. So
before we move on, I love your honesty. Before we move on to Fergus, is there anything you can say that will give us a little hint as to what you would have been doing in Piazza Vecchia in Bergamo this year?
Yeah, we are placing objects with 1.5 meter distance to each other.
Oh, okay.
So we must have had this idea of seclusion already kind of in our, so we are doing little elements that actually create a certain strange distance.
Wow. So you had this concept before we had the COVID problem?
Yes.
Ah, my goodness me.
My goodness, I am I have witchcraft.
Yeah, that is, it's extraordinary.
No,
Martin,
but it's just an association. No, it's it can also be described in another way, but it has this kind of Vereinzelung, like this idea of having singular objects that are kind of taken away from each other and being kind of lonesome, but in a big mass.
Yes.
So I'm really looking forward to realize it.
Yeah. No, we were all very disappointed not to be there this year and to see what you were doing. So Martin, thank you very much, and thank you for putting right your technical issues, because that's always the difficult thing with Zoom. You know, and these things happen, and you've mastered it beautifully, and your sound is good and everything. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so Fergus, over to you. So we've already done our introductions, really, and you were telling us about how life has been at Dixter during lockdown. But one thing I think we ought to mention, which I think is really exciting, at the moment on the Dixter website, you have quite an extraordinary art sale going on, don't you?
Yes, that's all sort of to help with the sort of lockdown fund, and so that ends tomorrow, and all stuff donated by all sorts of artists, actually, some abroad and some here, but all with a Dixter connection. So so finishes tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, so if anybody out there hasn't been onto the Dixter website and had a look at this art sale, it's an art auction and you can bid online. There are some extraordinary things for sale. Anyway, that's the sort of that's the information out of the way. So Fergus, today you're going to talk about biodiversity.
Well, I'm going to talk about the journey we've taken in order to sort of discover what we've got at Dixter, you know, and we were naive in certain ways, but it's just the importance of a garden in terms of harboring biodiversity, but also being a place where some of the most threatened species, as far as UK insects and, you know, invertebrates go, where some of the most threatened species can actually increase and from there go out into the countryside. So it's been sort of quite extraordinary results, this whole thing. But I want to take you through a journey first of all, and of course we're going to do a day together next year, Annie.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to do a study day.
Expand the whole subject, and because we've got so much information, because we've got all these scientists in to be with us for, you know, almost 2 years over it.
Yeah, that's right. So would you like to do the screen share, and we can have a look at what you're going to show us, and dream that we were at Dixter.
Okay, great.
Yep. Yeah,
so I'm just going to get through the introduction first, Annie, and just,
you know, full screen, one slide.
Yeah,
that's it. Perfect. Wonderful.
So for those of you who don't know it, this is Great Dixter House in East Sussex in England. It's a historic garden that's divided up into a series of rooms. And as everybody knows, it's overflowing with vegetation within a formal structure. It's an incredibly dynamic garden. You know, you see this dry stone wall in April with all of these plants that are coming out of it. And that same wall, 1 month later in May, does that. And then you see it slightly later, you know, on the opposite side where the giant fennels and those sort of things are flowering. So there's a lot of movement in this garden. The garden is very old, it's over 100 years old. And as a result, it's got a very rich seed bank, which means that you get self-sows everywhere. You've also got plants coming out of the walls, spilling out onto the paths, which gives it a wonderful, wonderful atmosphere. And this is what it looks like in the winter when we don't cut down everything all at the same time. We gradually work through the borders and tidy the garden up. And the place is well known for being the home of the late Christopher Lloyd, who died in 2006, who was undoubtedly one of the greatest garden writers of all time and one of the greatest gardeners of all time. And it's a charming place with meadows everywhere that kiss your ankles as you walk down this path. And these meadows are a rich tapestry of flowers, including these rare terrestrial orchids. And the whole thing is very atmospheric and very relaxed. But then, you know, the borders have a very strong handshake with all this wilderness, you know, where the countryside flows into the garden. But there's definition as well. So you'll have the borders separated from the meadow by a York stone path, but also a strip of mown grass. And I love the way the walls and the buildings are swallowed up by the vegetation. The steps are dripping with Erigeron carvinskianus and Centranthus ruber. And when you go up the steps and you're on the terrace, you see a scene like this, which several weeks later changes to a scene like that. And the same happens in our borders. You know, the wildflowers and self-sowers run along the seams of plants, and this scene changes to that with things like Verbascum olympicum, Senecio dora, and the whole place floats in cow parsley, Anthriscus sylvestris, which for many people is considered a weed, but it has a very strong place and an important place in the garden at Dixter. But all of this has to be managed. You know, that Anthriscus will go brown and then has to be cut down so that you clarify the picture. Okay, so, and then after the Anthriscus, the daisies are cut down. After the daisies, the Geranium pratense is cut down. So there has to be this sort of cleaning up operation that goes hand in hand with the wilderness within this garden. And from one year to another, that wildness changes. So this is the peacock garden, 1 year, and the following year, it may have a density like this of cow parsley that's spilling over it. But we absolutely love the style and the softness of comfortable planting. You know, this is Angelica with Amaranthus autumn palette, so that you can see through it. So this style of planting is very much our style. But we also like this, Colocasia Black Magic, making music with Arundodonax versicolor. Christopher Lloyd, after all, loved color and exuberant planting. So this is a flower arrangement that he did. And this is more or less his garden, as you can see there, with all those incredible, with those tall, colorful knockout plants that are part of it. So it's a colorful garden, but it's also a garden that changes from one season to another. So this is the long border in June, and you can see how it changes in July, and then it changes again in August, and then the color carries on until October. And this happens throughout the garden. You know, in a place in the high garden where you've got alliums in between the plants, the same area in July with Anthriscus and Amimagus, and then the same area later on in October. And there's only 3 areas where there has been planting for the summer. And those 3 areas are, I'll just highlight them. There with the canna there with the canna there, and there with the canna there. Other than that, it's just the vegetation changing that makes that happen. And the same happens here. In the top right, you can see snowdrops and crocus. That's underneath a shrub called Prunus tenella, which then flowers at the bottom left. And then once that finishes flowering, the blue Centuria montana takes over. That's all in one place. It's all in one space, and there's no extra work involved in that combination. So there's an element of change that happens naturally within our borders as the vegetation develops, it flowers, finishes flowers, and then something else takes over. But there's also an element of change that happens as a result of us changing the garden. So this may be the exotic garden one year where dahlias and cannas are basking in the sun, and the following year, that same space, maybe go to this. And then different again, the following year to that. So you go from vibrant like this to a jungle like that. That photograph was taken last week, and with big leaves and silhouettes up against the sky. And even introducing strange plants in this, like Cryptomeria oricoides, which blocks the path, and you have to pull yourself and push yourself through it. So it's a very tactile experience. So you can see that we're a very dynamic, colorful, exciting, and intensive garden with all of these different things that are going on. So the gardens here are highly yet sensitively managed. We're a show garden and one that's open to the public. And everyone, including ecologists, expects the wildlife value to be low. So that's important. So Christopher Lloyd died in 2006. Just going to see if I can, after he set up the Great Dixter Charitable Trust. We guessed that the estate was already rich in biodiversity, having been managed in an old-fashioned way by the Lloyds for years. But we sprayed for weeds and pests and tidied all the corners, as well as enjoying badgers and woodpeckers and great crested newts. We were sensitive to all those things, but not proactive. So on one hand, we embraced these animals, but on another hand, we sprayed. So we would have all of these creatures that are part of the garden. So we thought, you know, we're rich, we've got all this activity, we're okay. But when Christopher died, I wanted to take things further. So I decided to stop spraying. I used organic fertilizer fertilizer and less of it. I allowed the outside edges of the garden to grow, encouraging vegetation to billow out, and the place became even more charming. But it also raised a few eyebrows where people weren't happy about it. So on the edges of the garden, I did this. I just let the edges billow out, and it became just a wonderful part of the countryside. We let the vegetation self-sow into the paths, and so it became very soft like this. And even in these pathways that are in quite formal areas, we would allow things like cow parsley to hug the paths. This is a path that leads to our mess room. And this created a very nice contrast to the formality of Dixter. And we started playing around with creating more meadows in the fields outside the garden. We used the village to hay strew into the surrounding fields. And within a few years, we had orchids in these fields that were just grass. They were farmers' fields that we took back, and we used the hay and the seed source from our meadows, using the village and children, everybody that we could find, to a community project to actually then develop this into something that was extraordinarily rich. And now it's dripping with orchids. Now, all the way along, my wife would say to me, get a proper biodiversity audit done, because if you know what you've got there, you know then how you can manage it. I completely ignored her and carried on doing what we were always doing, you know, managing the ancient woodlands for a mosaic structure, but also using all the materials in the woods to make hurdles and those sort of things. But importantly, we were managing the woodlands to have a mosaic structure, so that increased the biodiversity. We took a mosaic system into our grassland cutting as well, using the work that Terry Wells had done way back, you know, years ago, with all his research into grassland management. And this again increased the biodiversity within our grassland. We regularly mowed some areas, grazed sheep with others. We left some other areas. As well as this, just for the excitement, we set moth traps to record the moths and found hundreds of them, you know, and it was just like opening up a jewel box. And at this time, we realized that we were onto something special in this garden, and there was a whole unknown world to us out there. There were just dozens and dozens of interesting creatures that shared the same space with us, and we were completely unaware of it. So I was really excited, and I told my wife that this was happening, and she said to me, look, darling, get a proper biodiversity audit done, because you know what you've got, and then you can manage it accordingly. And she's an ecologist, so I should have really listened to her, but I ignored her completely and got arachnologists in to look at spiders at Dixter. And this was very interesting, because the arachnologists completely dismissed the garden. They said, we're not really interested in coming. This was the British Arachnological Society. We're not really interested in coming because we think gardens are very often sterile spaces. So I said to them, well, why don't you have your meeting in a 15th century manor house, and we'll give you free food and free drink. And so, of course, they accepted and came to Dixter. They had their meeting. And at lunchtime, they went out to look at the compost heap, which you can see on the bottom left there, and found dozens of spiders within only 15, 20 minutes. And then they went out from the compost heap to the loos at the front, to the toilets at the front. They found a rare spider on the pond on a leaf. They found a very rare spider that's only been found in 3 other places in the United Kingdom recently on the fence post. And they found another one under a slab where the watering point was. So they were really excited. And before we knew it, we were on the front page of the spider newsletter with pages and pages of lists And the spider people then asked me whether they could come back and bring back beetle people and bee people and fly people. And of course I said yes. In the meantime, I'd made sort of various habitat piles imitating Romanian haystacks. And every time I went home to my wife, she'd say, get a proper audit done, because then you'll know what you've got and you can manage it accordingly. Because, she said, everything is interlinked. So it's no good you patting yourself on the back because you've seen a woodpecker and you're focusing on some rare insect. It's about that web of life that all interacts together, because the whole thing is interlinked. So with the help of the Heritage Lottery Fund and private donors, we commissioned an audit, a one-year comprehensive survey of the site done by leading experts looking at fungi, lichen, liverworts, mosses, bees, flies, beetles, hoverflies, moths, butterflies, mammals, as well as the flora. We also looked at the archaeology of the site, because the usage of the site will no doubt have an impact on the biodiversity. And this was managed by Victoria Williams on our side. And they divided the site up into different sections, you know, with formal gardens being one section, paddock, lower paddock, bottom meadow, etc., all of those sections. And within 1 year, which is a few visits, they recorded over 2,300 species, with over 100 species of lichen, with over 120 species of bee, out of a total of 200 species in the whole of the United Kingdom, with 4 species of principal importance to biodiversity, 2 nationally endangered, 7 nationally rare, 7 nationally scarce. It doesn't matter about all the rare and all of that, but it just showed you how special the site was. There were over 450 species of moth, including 32 species of principal importance to biodiversity in the United Kingdom, and several nationally scarce species. There were over 190 species of spider, including species of principal importance to the UK, several nationally rare species, and 13 nationally scarce species. And this was all from a handful of visits in 1 year. Our lead ecologist said it's one of the richest sites he's surveyed in his 30 years of surveying. And he was part of that group of people that said, no, we don't want to come to a garden because on the whole, gardens are sterile. And this has changed the way he thinks about gardens. Now he calls us a garden nature reserve, which should be designated a local nature reserve or a local wildlife site. And he also said, which was interesting, he said, and this is a quote from him, he said, I think gardens should be considered a high value habitat. So he's completely changed the way he's thinking. He said, so it should be considered a high value habitat within conservation and ecology. The exclusions of gardens from treble SI designation, that means site of special scientific interest, shows how gardens are devalued as artificial within conservation, even though pretty much all habitats in Britain is artificial and man-made. Conservation needs to understand that synanthropic, that's species that relate to or need human activity. Synanthropic species would be extremely rare without human activity. The close association with some diverse assemblages of species and human activity going back thousands of years in Britain and Europe and throughout the world should be given greater consideration, especially now that many pollinators are declining in the wider countryside and urban fringe habitats are acting as reservoirs for pollinator diversity. And you know, we've surveyed the whole of our land, and out of all of it, the richest part was the garden. Not the ancient woodlands, not the meadows within the garden, not the pasture land, the ancient grassland, but the garden itself. And out of all of that, the barn garden and the sunk garden, where this picture was taken, was the richest site of all. And we've got scientific evidence for that, where they just divided it all up. And you can see, if you look at this list, the number of species recorded for each survey area, this is about halfway through, you know, and if you look at these areas and look at that top line where it says all species, so there was 676 all species. FG means formal garden, 271 was recorded in the formal garden, and with 240 recorded in the plant fair field. Okay, and that's important as well. So when we're thinking about creating a wildlife garden, we're immediately thinking about creating a meadow like this, whereas that had much more species, many more species in it. Now, it's not correct to say one is better than the other, because they act together, and that's very important to say, you know. And just because something has few species doesn't mean that it's a poor site, because it will all interact. But it was interesting that that meadow had less species than the garden. And even though that meadow I showed you with orchids is so biodiverse and rich, an area like this, the plant fair field, where we don't have orchids and those rare species and all of that, that was the second most richest part of the whole estate. And that's because it's got a number of different habitats to it. Okay. So why is Dixter rich? Dixter is rich because it has a wide range of habitats: wet, dry, sunny, shady, mosaic woodland to mosaic grassland to bare ground. It's detritus rich. It has porous buildings. It has old fence posts, recycled material, porous walls, which allows insects to bed themselves in, ecotones and so on. It's a complex mosaic. It has a long season of pollen and nectar-rich resources, and it has layered planting. That succession planting that we do mimics what goes on in the wild. It's had no spraying for the last 14 years. It has trauma and disturbance from digging, and which creates another habitat, like a cliff falling and creating new open ground. And the types of flowers that encourage pollinators is high. High populations of umbels and alliums, which aren't restrictive to a few species, but embrace a large number of species. And the web feeds itself. The more there is, the more there will be. So it shows that an intensively managed garden with ecological practices can be a haven for wildlife. Great Dixter proves this. And other gardens can mimic the model without jeopardizing their ornamental aesthetics, because we're a highly ornamental garden. And together we can blur the edges between horticulture and ecology whilst creating beautiful artistic spaces. So gardens are woodland edge. You know, that's what they are. That's an important ecotone. And in the UK, we have lost much of our integrated system of woodland merging into grassland, with the two coexisting. The valuable ecotone of the woodland edge has also been tidied up and lost as we manage grasslands for grassland and woodlands as pure woodland. Gardens serve as woodland edge, and to this you add a diversity of flora and a diversity of structures, and everybody gardening slightly differently, so there's diversity of habitats, and you have something very special. So diversity is the key here. And on closer inspection and analysis, the breaking down of Great Dixter's habitats makes it obvious that these can be mimicked in smaller gardens, and together will add up to something effective in towns and cities. Because if you look at this photograph, there is Dixter at the top with all the wild land that's around it. Well, that structure is no different from a town or village in the bottom right, or a city on the other side, where you can have that complex mosaic system in the center that feeds the outside, and the outside feeds the inside. So ecologists have considered gardens to be, and designed landscapes to be, part of the problem. But hopefully they'll realize that we're part of the solution and can be part of the solution. But there is nothing new about this. Somebody like Jennifer Owen, who did a study many years ago in suburban gardens, showed how rich gardens can be, but unfortunately her work has been ignored. You know, and there are many, many wonderful people out there that are doing or have done their work in one way or another that contribute to this, whether it's Nigel Dunnett, or whether it's Chris Baines, or whether it's John Little, or, you know, all of these people have played a part in it, and whether it's the wonderful work that Laura Gatti does, and so, or Richard Bird, and so it's amazing stuff that's gone on. And if you look at the statistics, 450,000 hectares of garden in the UK, 280,000 hectares of roadside verge. You add those together, that's an incredible area that we can manage. And this can go hand in hand with protecting the countryside, and we can do this without compromising our beauty. You know, so you know, we've still got anemic landscapes like this happening. We have wildflowers along a little sort of car park in Hastings, where I live, look absolutely glorious one year, and in another year they're sprayed off by the council, and I don't understand why they're doing that at all. And the reason why Great Dixter is rich is relevant to any design landscape and any garden. The mosaic system within Dixter can be replicated in any village, town, city, and it just needs politicians, ecologists, town planners, councils, builders, landscapers, architects, landscape architects, volunteer groups, gardeners, and private individuals to have the will to work together, and something important can come out of that. Okay. And it was just very nice during lockdown when we had the garden to ourselves with maybe 2-3 gardeners there. And the whole place was to ourselves, and all the vegetation grew out of the seats and it looked marvelous like this. And what you did is that you were away from the hustle and bustle of everyday busy life, because everything calmed down, and you then recognized and realized and saw the wildlife that was around you. That whether there were foxes and other things coming into our cities, or whether it was the bee activity or bird activity at Dixter, that came to the fore. And I think it made us stop and think about what we're doing, not only in our gardens, but not only in our towns and villages, but also to this planet as well. So that's the end of the talk.
Fergus, thank you. Would you like to just come back to screen yourself for a minute, just to have a quick chat? That was so beautiful. I've been really missing my monthly visits to Dixter to teach there, and it's just wonderful to see it. And I loved your expression of the plants kissing your ankles. I think that's just divine. Just interesting, one point I just want you to love to hear your opinion on, and I think you've almost answered it, is the fact that after this report, that the garden itself was the most diverse part of the site. So where does that sit with the people who say we should be planting natives as opposed to non-natives? Because Dixter's a mixture of everything, isn't it? So
I think there's room for both. What you don't want is people who just want to plant natives to poo-poo the people who are having gardens. And there is this this has happened in the same way that gardeners think that in order to have a wildlife garden, you need a bramble patch and nettles, and they don't see the beauty of those plants. In the same way, ecologists are looking at exotic or introduced plants or garden plants and thinking that they're from the devil, you know. So I think it just shows that. And of course, I'm a great advocate for protecting the countryside and conservation and all of that. But also, I want people. The important thing of this was that people to recognize that gardens can have a part to play in this, in increasing biodiversity. You know, it doesn't just have to be native. And the important thing for Dixter is that there's a massive gardening audience out there, and Dixter is well known. So actually, for a garden to say, hey guys, the wildlife within your garden is important, surely that does good, doesn't it? You know, because the people who are picking up conservation magazines or whatever, they're already converted. And a part of our job is to convert those people who aren't converted to this,
yeah,
you know, to spray less and do that. So, you know, I'm not ashamed of using exotics as well. I've got one foot in ecology, conservation, and one foot in the garden side. But I think that both can sort of sit together.
Yeah, yeah. And have you found at Dixter that during lockdown, when we couldn't travel, we couldn't visit, and the garden was closed, that the plant sales were going up in the nursery? Was that busier there?
Yes, I think so. Absolutely. I think, you know, Annie, coming back, the industry's got to look itself really in the way that there's so much wastage. It's not just about biodiversity. It's about the use of plastic wastage, you know, sustainability. It's about all of those things. And so it's about all those chemicals and sprays that we use as well, you know. And so I think it was very pleasing that people were buying more plants for their gardens, but that's only a part of the battle. You know, all of this. It's about recognition about everything, the way we live. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great message, and of course we mustn't lose track of the fact that also Dixter is a great place of learning. You're very committed to teaching and learning, and so anybody who's watching, who's tuned in, who has never been to Dixter, once
travel restrictions, you know, change and we can start to travel a bit further afield, it's such an important place to visit and to see, and hopefully we can do that before too long. But it's been lovely to hear, you know, hear what you've been doing and look at the studies and to see those evocative images of Dixter, which are just so magical. I especially love the woodland image, that rather haunting woodland image, the ancient woodland that you show. That was just stunning, you know, because it's been like that for thousands of years, hasn't it?
Yes, it has for sort of hundreds of years. But I mean, Annie, I've only just touched on the tip of that because we've got all those statistics and the facts and we've broken down everything. It's just fascinating the way the whole thing works together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Fergus. It's been lovely to have you on.
Everybody.
And yeah, that's been amazing. Thank you. And before we go on to our next speaker, we're going to have a short message from Grazie Signori, who is from MyPay. And MyPay are the company based in Milan who've been very kind to allow, to facilitate the fact that this seminar or this webinar has been interpreted into different languages. So Grazie, would you like to just say a few things, say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Annie. Welcome to everybody. I'm Grazie Signori, and together with Marcello De Ganuti, who is here with me, we are in charge of a special range of products for external paving. So something really very close to everything dealing with landscaping. So I just would like to introduce you one case study of ours, and I will be with you also next Thursday and next Friday, so we can share some other experiences together. So here we go. I'll try to share my, let's see, I'll try to share my screen.
Okay.
There we go. All set. Here we go.
Okay.
I guess you can see it right now.
Yeah. Yep, that's looking good.
Okay, that's fine. So which are the main issues we have to fulfill whenever we are asked for helping designers with long-term project for paving? So the issues are very, very many. So we have the needs for use, the technical standards, compliance, the preservation of the environment and the pre-existing situation, identity and beauty, of course, are some other interesting and very important issues, sustainability, heritage, especially whenever you're dealing with towns, circular economy, and safety. And so we would like to introduce you a very special case study we dealt with the last couple of years, which mean 2018 and 2019, in Lignano Sabbiadoro, which is a very special place in northern Italy. You see something here in the very eastern and northern part of Italy. It's a seaside, so we have to make a brand new waterfront. So besides all the aesthetical properties of this job, which means they wanted to simulate the effect of the sand covering the paving. So the paving should be supposed to be a fake sand. Okay. And what else? There was a very great big issue that you can maybe be familiar with, which was the preservation of the pre-existing trees dating back to the 1950s. And so 405 pine trees were treated in order to preserve them. And during the forecast for the project, 40 of them were supposed to be replanted with brand new ones. And at the end of the project, we were very lucky because just 29 of them needed to be replanted again. All the rest were saved. So the very interesting thing is that you see all the designer were very involved with all the systems with preservation of the trees and also with the identification of the climatic zone in order to save the pre-existing trees and plants and to introduce brand new plants according to the climatic zones. But on the other hand, they did not do the same thing for the paving. So what we found was that the paving was not taken into account as the kind of loads traffic supposed to be, the environmental condition, and of course the bearing layers of the paving. So the same attention paid to the trees, we finally decided to help the designers to pay to the paving. So what did we do? We talk about durability, so we tried to help them finding the right stone with the proper thickness, the proper shape, and the proper properties, of course also the CE marking according to the standards. And then we identified the traffic and wearing stresses. We identified, such as the traffic, the buses, because the road was supposed to be a bus road and also a usual traffic road. And then we also recognized all the weathering conditions, which means freeze and thaw, and of course the sprays, the sea spray, and of course also the icing salts. And then we identified also the bearing layer properties and the bedding layer properties, the resistance of the bedding layer, the stratigraphy which was supposed to be used, and also the installation conditions. So after that, we suggested to use Mapstone system, which is compared to regular system, is very high stress resistance, both long term, which is 28 days, and also low term, which we have soon, in order to make the job site be very easy to be managed. And so what we did is that compared to the regular bedding, which is, as you see, very full of voids, we proposed a special mortar with admixtures that makes very compact bedding, just to make you not forget never this, forget never. It's something like, you see, something crunching, crunching cookies, and then the so-called torrone, which is a very, very hard and very resistant candy, and very soft and very fragile candy. And in order to have a final result, which is something like this instead of something like that, which means durability. Okay, this system is suitable for any kind of stone paving. And here are a very brief video with all the phases we had for this architectural stone paving. So we started everything with using the silos, which means easy, zero waste, sustainability, and very cheap supply of bedding, and then a special mortar I told you before, the one like torrone, and then a special mixing of the mortar with a special amount of water in order to have it in a plastics consistency. This plastic consistency make it very, very stouter. So we were on the job site helping people understand which was the right consistencies to be used, we taught them how to learn to understand it was right, which means you make a tennis ball and then your hands stay dirty, and then we just have them laying the bedding, and also of course you see all the slabs were already ready to be applied. We applied a very thin slurry in order to make everything monolithic as a stratigraphy, and the importance to have all the rear of the slab completely covered with this slurry makes the paving durable, together with the bedding, of course. And then the stone was laid and beaten in order to have it completely in adhesion with the bedding. You see, one by one, everything is worked by hand, so it's a very hard job. And then the slabs were watered in order to keep them wet and cold because it was summer. And so after that, we prepared the grouting mortar mixing. Again, it's a pre-mixed mortar from the same range of the bedding, with again frost presental resistance, de-icing salt resistance, and sea spray resistant. So the slurry was prepared like a cream, let's say something like that. We keep on food comparisons. And this creamy consistency was then applied over the slabs in order to have all the groutings completely filled and with this grouting mortar. And then finally the surface washing with a very light shower in order to have it cleaned. And finally, here is the final result of this job. But together with the stone paving, we also use the exposed aggregated concrete paving just to simulate the sand, as I told you before. So this is a special technology we have with the mixtures too. So you can have prepared many mock-ups for both aggregate selection and exposure of the aggregates. So after that, we together with our director, we found the right aesthetical aspect, and you can also make tri-dimensional things like this fountain, and also manholes and whatsoever. And so here you can see some details of the paving, both with aggregate concrete paving and natural stone paving. So this is just to make you understand some of our products, how they work. Let's see. Oops. Okay. Okay. Let's see. And this job was so particular. It was more or less 46,000 square meters, so it was very large. And finally, it won a special award for sustainability, for sustainable cities. And so just a very brief presentation of this case study to make you understand that we share many values: the safety of the environment, of course, the durability, the sustainability, and most of all, the responsibility of a very special, well done, and durable job. So this is one of our jobs, and this is the place we were last year. I haven't been yet to this year, even though I don't live so far away from them. But I hope we'll see you next Thursday and next Friday for other case studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Grazia. That was really interesting. A lovely use of images too. I especially like the guy holding up the phone.
I think he's dead right now. He's
I actually think he is.
100 years ago. So.
I actually think he was dead very shortly after that picture was taken, quite frankly.
I wanted to add something you would never forget.
Absolutely. No, that's right. That and the Torone, that's the two images that stick with me.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to MyPay for providing us with interpreters today.
Okay,
as well.
it's a pleasure.
Opened up these webinars to a huge audience in Italy. Thank you so much. And Russia as well, and Spain, and everywhere. Okay, so our next speaker is Rainer Schmidt. Rainer, are you there somewhere?
Hello.
Hello, hi. Grazia, I just need to get you to unshare the screen so that we're back to, thank you. That's lovely. So Rainer, we're back in Germany. You're in Munich, I understand. Is that correct?
So, okay, yeah. We are landscape architects in Munich, in Berlin, and we are landscape architects and urban planners, and designing all over the world, landscape architecture, and yeah, that's our job. What we're doing since in the office since over 35 years, and with employees all together, we are 40 landscape architects in our team, and landscape architects and also urban planners, and yeah, we are a vivid young team, and have good results in the last years. So I can start with my presentation, Annie.
Wonderful, yes, and just to say that your company, your design philosophy is you're very concept led, aren't you? You work with a very strong concept for your designs, and that's what you're going to be talking about today, I think. Is that right?
That's correct.
Lovely.
That's my starting point. Thank you, Annie.
That's okay.
So we are really landscape architects and urban planners. Why we doing urban planning? That's a very important thing. I started this 30 years ago. As I mentioned, that if we designing the framework from the houses, then we have the hard design of the landscape architecture, because the space is designing, the open space, the edges of the spaces are designing and defining, and that is one point working in both directions, urban planning and landscape architecture. The other thing is that we working timeless. That is what my thing is. After 20 years, I always will be on our projects and will happy, and also see that the people are happy, because it is timeless and is something what's refresh and give something to the people. So we are very strong on the user. What wants the user, and what is the language of landscape architecture they want. What is the language of urban planning the user want for living together, for living in the open space, and how people interact in this landscape, and what they getting. And so they're very important. That is your words, Annie. We analyze very strong the site, and then all our projects having strong concepts. Concept means that is something what the user getting something and understand, and can maybe telling his neighbor, oh, I've seen something, it was so wonderful, and I'm getting something, and it was so great, and I'm feeling so well, and defining by themselves a story. So I start with some very quick projects to see how we work with concepts in urban planning. And after this, I have two projects in a deeper declaration of what we're doing. There's a project first prize for in Guangzhou is 30 square kilometers, and we're defining clusters of urban developments, and in the middle we're designing a new center. And this new center of landscape architecture, a new park, developing of the old traditional use of this area, and this was gardens. This was the first areas where hibiscus and roses, the Chinese roses, were cultivated, and we putting this together as a new around a new lake, as an identity of the whole area. You see all the high-rise buildings around. It's about 300 new inhabitants in this area. But in the middle is a new lake, and around that are flower fields. We're designing flower fields in the way of what I know from Holland, with all the fields of tulips, and the flower fields are the image of the whole new urban development. So urban development and landscape architecture come together, and the identity of this new development is working with green, with the flowers, and with sustainable new forms of architecture. The second urban development is one big city about 60 square kilometers in Qatar, in nearby Doha, the capital. It's the area of a formal airport, and with 3 different areas. And defining this, so we are developing a new city, a new sustainable city. With most of the city is for pedestrians. This walkability is one word, a very important word. So people's walking, and we have no traffic in the whole city. You have all autonomous cars, electrical cars in the city. So it's a new sustainable city we are designing with the nature. What you see in the seas is mangroves, and we protect this as mangroves. And around the mangroves, we are designing this new residential area in this new development, and the new waterfront, harbor front on the existing mangroves in this bay. The third is urban development is something in China. It's a totally new sustainable urban development with green roofs, with green energy, with a new form of living, because the inhabitants getting an app, and they can select what we can do in the open space in the city. Maybe a father with children has time on the Saturday afternoon. We give it in this app, and the app is giving, oh, you can walking and watch the fishing. You can walking and you can walking over the edges of the waterfront. You can going in the sports area and can do some sports, or you can do in the area along the river, and you can see the urban gardening in glass houses in the open fields. So it's a full program working with the inhabitants. Or in the middle is a big financial city with a new convention center, and you can also go to this point, and you have attractions in the marketplace, and the exhibitions, something like this. So it's a totally new form of city working with inhabitants. But this is the urban planning part. The other part is strong landscape architecture concepts. So this is an initial garden show in Munich. The theme was micro macro, so micro structures. So that is a field. This is a picture you can see under the microscope in 10⁻⁵, and that is a leaf. The backside of the leaf of a Calta palustris. And if you see it in the microscope, you see this structure, and we take this structure and make a new garden of it. Or we take the wood of Tilia, and if you see the wood of Tilia in the microscope, 10⁻⁵, you can see the structure. We take the structure, this grid structure, and designing a garden with this. So it's a whole concept. Or you see the structure of a leaf, and we take the structure of a leaf and designing a new part of the garden exhibition with the structure of the leaf. So micro macro will be a new theme for this garden show. Also, as you see the big nest, and the net will be blow up in the 20 times of the normal size, and you'll be in this net and see the space of this net, and so the user getting it. I'm in a field of microstructure. So another concept, that is a concept with urban planning and landscape architecture. This is a new university campus, and we designing as architects the structure of the buildings, but the connections is all the lines between the buildings. That is the lines of each edge of the building has a line, and this line structures with a net the whole campus area, and then we work together with the architect. That's the first side. We see the lines of this picture of all the buildings, and the lines of the picture structured with nets the whole campus. And then we working very strong with the facade. The facade of the buildings reflecting in the pavement in the whole area. So the building structure, the facade of the buildings, and the open space, the pavement of the open space, all the boulevards and squares will become together, and it's one big identity. Another, we have a project in the north of Germany, is Bremen, it's very windy, and the river Weser, and there's a tower from Helmut Jahn, a glass tower, and I say we have to work with the wind, with the structure of the wind, and we make all around stripes with lot of high graminees, miscanthus, and all these miscanthus are waving in the wind, and that is identity in this whole area. We make a carpet of miscanthus, and put these buildings in this carpet of miscanthus, and the springtime coming up some perennials. So it's all the flowering in the springtime until the miscanthus has a height of 1.5 and start in summer itself to blooming. So it's a full development over the year with plants, but the buildings are in the strong identity of plants. Even in the winter time, if the miscanthus is brown, and in the winter time the frost coming in the leaves and make this with white edges. So it's also an adventure to see it in the winter time. Another project is a museum in Munich, and old museum from 1900. And we're working with, and the road is very wider as before. And the space in front of the building was not enough. So it's not enough for the height of the building. So we decided we make a new form of parterre going down with a loop to the building and opening or make the open space bigger. So it's a building getting a new proportion. And that's the main idea of this whole project. And then we're working also with a perspective illusion. So you can see that the edges on one side are wider and one side is smaller. Also on one side a little bit higher and one side smaller. So if you're where the bicycle is and you're inside, you have a perspective illusion that is much more wider, and it's also working to make this illusion to make the building in front, the entrance building, bigger. In the courtyard of this museum, we work with what we find on the building. On the building, you find the Rowe structure on the windows. We take the structure and make a new stone parterre in the courtyards. And the stone parterre is a Baroque element. You can see it by the exhibitions from this museum. So it works very strong with the strongest elements. You see it on the metalworks over the entrance, the Rowe structures. And this we putting in the center of the stone parterre of this building. Another project is the airport in Munich, and it's always a strong concept because you can see it here very strong. At first, you can see we have two carpets: the carpet for arrival, the carpet for departure, and the main for the main terminal. There's one thing, and then we're working with storytelling about the landscape around around the airport. The landscape from the hilly landscape, the story of the hilly landscape, the story of the river Isar, the story about the formal villages there, and we make a form of illusion about the stories about it in artificial form about this landscape around the airport. So here you can see the carpets again, the arrival carpet and the departure carpet in form of a pavement. Also the nighttime. Since you can see the hilly landscape in a new form of abstraction, also with the fruit trees in this form, it is Amlantia. As the fruit trees, we have no real fruit trees because we have the problems with the birds then nearby the airport. So we have to select fruit trees without fruits. So Amlantia is the form. And nearby also the new hotels, the airport hotel. Playing with stories about landscapes for vacation. So that's landscape of Italy, that's landscape of cypresses, or you can see on the left-hand side landscape of the Provence with stripes of lavandula. So we're telling the story about the people are in this hotel are going with the plane to this vacation areas in the around the Mediterranean Sea. So the next project is also storytelling about in the urban structure. We have made the whole urban planning for this area with business centers, with residential areas, with high-rise buildings. And in the center park, we're telling a story because most of the buildings are high-rise buildings with higher buildings, and you can see always the skyline of the mountains. We're telling a story in this park, a story about the story about the landscape between Munich and the mountain area. And the different areas, and you have different gardens telling the stories, and so that's you see these people sitting in this is a garden of the agriculture. We're telling about the agriculture around all field structures and with plants, but this is a garden of agriculture. We can see the garden in front of the left-hand side, the garden of the hilly landscape in front of the Alps. You can see the garden of the mountain sea. That's all what you now green is flowering in the spring with blue flowers. So it's the mountain sea garden, and so different stories in these gardens form this park. So give elements in the park. This is a gravel garden, and we put in this park pavilions, 10 to 10 meters. And these pavilions are given the proportion for the user, because if you have high-rise buildings around or higher buildings, then it is very not so good conditions for the user from the proportion. Through these buildings, we're getting a human scale in the park, and form with this human scale, with the pavilions, the human scale to use in this park, and in this pavilions, in this pergolas, are always special elements regarding the gardens we have on these pavilions. So that's the trees in this gardens telling about something about what we find in the garden. Another project is in China, it's Land Rover City, together with Helmut Jahn. And we work, well, in this project, all the concept is very strong to work with this facade of the building. So you see the facades, that's very flaring facades, glass facades. And we also be working with the pavement, the same structure, so that's come all together. So landscape architecture and the building structure come together and bring a unique design. So it's one project, and architects and landscape architects work together from the first sketches, what we're always doing. Not that the architect doing something and then after finishing the design, we coming to landscape architect, do something. No, we say we work together from the first sketch together and producing the ideas together. So it's really one project and one whole piece, and that is something what the user understand and brings a lot of identity and bring a new form of worth of the real estate project. Well, this is a convention center in Qatar, in Doha. This building is 600 meters long, and you see the dot points. That's all the lighting coming from the roof. And all be working together with the architect from the beginning. And you see the building, and the point is this tower 600 meters high. In the front, you see the park. In the parks, it's our waves. And so these yellow waves and blue waves. These are one waves are the dunes from the desert, and the blue waves are the waves from the sea. And the tower is something like a light fire. And we working with this blue and yellow waves, and also in the surrounding of the building, the blue and yellow waves are dots. You can see as a tower, 600 meters high tower, and then the building. And then we develop dots, and these dots in blue and yellow are continuous waves from the park around the building. You see the dots of the roof, and then you see the dots, the yellow and the blue dots also on the pavement. So the same that architecture and landscape architecture come together and are unique and come together as one piece of architecture. Another project, also with a strong concept, is also from the urban design and also from landscape. The client come to us and say they want to have Manhattan. And we're discussing what is Manhattan. Manhattan are high-rise buildings, very high-rise buildings, and Central Park. And the best locations is the actual Central Park. And we say, okay, we bring the buildings together, high-rise building to high-rise building, back to back, and then we have a green corridor. And that is the concept of the urban design. We have always green corridors between the buildings, the main park, and then we have green fingers and then the green boulevards, and structuring so the whole hundred of high-rise buildings. In the middle, we have the big central park. And then we have a specialty. Here's the main master plan. We have in this area, we have one times a year, we have a big wave. So the flood coming from the sea. At the same time comes the spring water from the mountains. And in this Manchu city, the water in the river is coming together to a standing wave. It's a very high wave of 8 meters height. And this is a very spectacular, natural spectacular situation. A lot of people are coming to as an attraction. And we have this balconies to visit this natural attraction. And so we have along the river, we have the park of waves. We see all the waves. And then we have in the middle, in the green fingers, we have the park of ditches. It's all the ditches coming from the mountains to this river. And then it's built, we have this Central Park is always built. We have all these ditches in a zigzag line coming down to the balconies, to visiting this big standing waves. And under this zigzag lines of the telling the stories of ditches, we have underground cities, the shopping mall and the underground station. And we have park water features as attractions. And we have courtyards for the underground city, and we have special tree structures with special illumination, and so it's also the whole park coming together from architecture, from urban planning, and from planting design coming together to one whole piece. And even on the stairs, the green structure goes down in a zigzag line. And so there's one piece of landscape architecture and urban planning. For the next project, and this is now the two project in the deeper explanation. So this is a new park in Stuttgart, Killesberg Park, a very special project. So the clients, this was the city of Stuttgart, coming to us. We want to have a future park. And you have to do a park design what's never existing on the world. So it's a very very strong challenge to do something like this. And this area before was an area for the fair, the Stuttgart Fair, and all the areas. This was normally that's the whole area is a mountain area with a strong slope, was all terraces, and between the terrace was exhibition halls. And then the first thing what we're doing after demolishing the exhibition halls, we repair the landscape. It was the first thing. We can see all the contour lines of the high lines, the contour lines, and we repair the landscape. We see the very clear slope of the lines, very natural, very calm, and what's the first thing. On the both sides, on the middle, you can see the new urban developments. That's on the right side. This is a residential zone, and on the left-hand side, these are villas and extending the existing villas and the surrounding. And then you see a lot of red lines, in strong, dense red lines. And that's the story about the history. Because all this area was in the past, this was a quarry. And all the historical buildings of the center of Stuttgart was built up with the stones of this area. So we have the story about this formal ferry structures. We repair the landscape, the whole landscape. And then we have the quarries, the former quarries, and the edges of the quarries existing until now. And then we're starting with designing. So what we're doing with the future park? What is the story about the future park? We're deciding at first to finding the spatial edges. Then we're starting what we're doing. Okay, we have, so this is the left hand side. This is sunny side. So we have the west side. We have more attraction here. We have sunny side. Then we're starting what we're doing. Do we extend the existing park? Or say, no, it's boring, that's not future, that's not new, and not doing what's existing. That's the old Killesberg Park. Is one of the famous parks in Germany because it was built 1930 as the first park from Matern and Hammerbacher, the first park in the 20s is a nature park, very strong with plants of the ecological dimension, and so it's a very long tradition. But to do this theme as a new park, extend this theme, this was not correct for the future park, never extended. So then we do something and say, okay, we can do something because always for the client, for some guys, the guys they want about sustainability and cheap maintenance. Okay, we say, okay, that's if you want it cheap, you can do it very cheap. So we have edge, the green edge, we have some flower fields. No, that's the leader of the client. We want the future park. We want something what is outstanding. Okay, then we start to do something with the contour lines and make it stronger with waves and say maybe is this something as an extension of the existing structure of the mountains. With the left-hand side, make a hilly landscape or rolling landscape. And then comes a day, no, it must be more fluent, it must something coming together. And then coming up with the idea of this, what you see. And this is something to tell a story about the quarry. The quarry is somebody is coming on shape out stones, taking out stones with strong machines and taking out, and you see there's something. And so we say something, we have under this, you have a very unrelated landscape from stone landscape existing, and we do something with a structure coming together with the shaping out something. And we're developing something like this, like the system of footpaths. The yellow one is a fast way main footpath, and then you have this red one, this network of red one footpaths. That is something you have time. We talk ways of time. German word is Schlenderway, so that means you have time. You have go to this, and then so you have a new urban structure, new urban development, and then we're designing between this footpaths, designing a hilly landscape. And you see that's in the edges, the footpaths are deeper, and the hills are 1.2 meters higher. And so we have always working in these footpaths between small valleys. And these valleys, the small hills, the small hill and valleys, telling a story to cave out material. Something is working under this hills, and we're getting a landscape very interesting. You have deeper footpaths, and then this meadow pillows. We call it meadow pillows, and getting a total new form of park. And you see the whole park has a slope. That the difference between the sea area and the higher point is around 20 meters. So it's a long slope. And the people walking between this meadow pillars, and you see the people, if you're looking in the park, only half. And that is an interesting thing. You're getting a change in perception, because you see somebody, but you cannot see the size of the people. And you see the user, and the pews are smaller, and you mean the park is much more wider. And then you have the system of the footpaths, and this is not rational. This is irrational. You don't know where are this person walking in this park. What is the destination of it? Mostly his own not know what is the destination, but it is something like an attraction. People walking there for leisure, and between this and in this time you can go on the deeper area, and then some pupils of these go up for the upper level. So it's a play with these different levels of the park, and a form of illusion going in this park and walking in this park. All the benches are deeper integrated in these pillows, and you see only the heads in this park. And it's something like illusion. And the result now is that in the bakery nearby you can rent picnic baskets, and then in the picnic bar is also a small carpet, like a park carpet, and then the people sitting on the hills and watching other people going through this footpaths. It's something like a big stage, and the attraction is being in this park and looking to other people. Integrated is all the water management. We're collecting all the water from the surrounding, from the new buildings surrounding, in the big caves from the underground structures from the former fair, and there are big cisterns now. We're collecting the water, and then with this water we play in the existing water ditch that's without water, but we have all the water system in this small water ditch in this, and the big sustainable water system to irrigate the meadow pillows, and also integrated the stairs, and so it's an event landscape around. And on the edge we have a new form also built from us, a new form of residential area with new forms of buildings. Not far away from here is the famous Waisenhof-Siedlung from the Bauhaus architect, and the developer want to have a new form of Waisenhof-Siedlung, innovative Bauhaus-Siedlung from the new century. And so that's a very innovative architecture with innovative also open space with fruit trees, all fruit trees inside and this. So the second project, very quick, I will explain to you, is the new mosque in Algiers. The opening of this new mosque is the 1st November of this year. So I hope in 8 weeks or 6 weeks we have the opening with the president. And after we have designing this, we're starting designing this project for 15 years. So the building, what you see now is 1 kilometer. From one edge on the left-hand side to the right side, the building is 1 kilometer. In the other parts, you see 3 other buildings. That is a conference center, a bibliothek, and a school for new Islamic priests. And then you see the different courtyards in this mosque area, and the open space areas between the buildings. We can see here on the air picture the big size of the building, 1 kilometer, and integrated in the urban structure of Algiers. You see the big dimension of the building. And the building is directly on the other side of the bay, the opposite to the old city of Algiers. It is a landmark. So you have a minaret with 250 meters high, very, very thin like a needle. So one of the biggest minarets in the world. And specialist of this minaret, in the inside of the minaret is a museum, is Islamic museum. And there's a landmark, and there's a landmark in Algiers and a landmark for the state of Algiers. The client come to us and tell to us every 300 years we are constructed a new mosque. So the last mosque was 1600. So that is a must for the next 300 years, the new mosque in Algiers. So now you see the constructed buildings, and you see the landscape architecture surrounding. We have one is Islamic gardens. Another one is a new form of landscape park. The interesting thing are the different courtyards, because the courtyards are the courtyards of ceremonial. So we have the courtyards of washing. So all around the courtyards are the different bathrooms to wash for the wash procedure before going to prayer to pray. And so we have the first courtyard is formed by 4 fountains and with ficus trees, and all is in the courtyard is all marble as a pavement, and also with a special pattern. And this was very interesting. As we start for 15 years, we thought, okay, we're doing something like we have done in Dubai, and then we're getting something very good conservation with the Minister of Religious Affairs, and he gave us the audience for 1 hour and tell us about the religious in North Africa. It's totally different, and the nomadic patterns in the Islamic area in North Africa is total different. And so we start with a new form of patterns, dividing the different areas of the pavement, and then you have the entrance to the prayer hall, the main prayer hall, and the fountains. And then we're coming to the main feature of the between the buildings. And this is a new form of Islamic gardens. The client come to us, we want to have Islamic gardens. So what are Islamic gardens for the 21st century? So what is Islamic gardens? So it was very interesting for us as a Christian. It was an honor to do this to do it as a Christian Islamic mosque and work on Islamic gardens. So at first we're dividing the area and related to the urban structure of the surrounding buildings. So we taking the shape of the buildings, dividing different areas. Then we're working with access. So you see all the access on the Islamic garden is always formed with water access. You can see it on the Islamic garden of the Alhambra. So you can see it with the Generalif with the water access. And you can see it in the Iranic gardens with the big water access. So that's this theme of water access is very important, and you have little fountains, the feeling of coolness. And if you look to the Islamic gardens are the picture of the paradise. And that is one of very important things. If you're reading the Quran, you see it's a lot of verses about paradise. And we have to create a paradise. This was the first thing. And then we start to research in the Quran. And the Quran is a botanic book. It's full with plants. And you see, you can read different areas in the Quran. There are different plants. And so we decided we have different gardens with a unique structure of patterns coming together in the form of the pattern and the pattern of the pavement coming together with the pattern of the gardens. But each garden has its own structure of plants, a theme of plants. So if you're knowing the Quran and walking in this garden from one garden to one garden, you have the content of the Quran. you can see the different parts of the Quran. And if I explain this, so the Minister of Religious Affairs was so very happy. This is unique. This is really something what is not in the Islamic world, something like this. So that is what we mentioned out, the different plants, Punic, the granat apple, Punic granatum, for example, tamarisk trees, wine structures. So we Sisyphus trees. So there's different trees, and these trees we put together and analyze out, put together in this gardens, and make this design of the gardens, and with this always the same unique structure, but with different plants, materials, and so but also flowering and fruiting to different times in the year, and then we're creating this new forms of Islamic gardens. In all these Islamic gardens, the paradise, the trees are growing. There's mostly are fruit trees with fruits and flowers. In the most of the gardens, we have fountains, additional to this water access fountains, and so that's really something like new forms of paradise. And in the pre-opening, some botanics will say, okay, that will be a very big attraction for visitors of all the world to see these forms of new Islamic gardens. The second part, we have then as a big boulevard. This the mosque is for amount of 50,000 people, but in the festival days we have outside additional 50,000 people. So we have 100,000 people by the big Islamic festivals, religious festivals, in this mosque area. So we need very big paved areas with a special pavement. You see also the pattern of the pavement regarding the pavement of the nomads of North Africa. And then we have on the left-hand side, you see this wall. And upside of the wall, we're starting the secret gardens. The secret gardens going up to the new form of landscape garden. But the edge of this wall, edge of water walls. We have water walls on the right side and side. You can see it. Water walls, so you have all the walls are covered, coming down the water from the top, and that's very important. It gives all the feeling of paradise. It's a cool feeling. We have other microclimate, and that's all very important to have this attraction about from the noise. We have the attraction of the other form of microclimate, and of course the attraction of visual attraction on the right hand side of the water walls. On the left-hand side, you can see the big water fountain. That's the entrance on the minaret, and you can walk through this big water. It's like mirror lakes, featured by the night with different illuminations. And you can walking through this water. It's always something like this. The Quran is very similar to the Christian basic. So also the Quran has all the Old Testamental elements of Moses walking through the Red Sea, and all this also something working with this Old Testament structures in both of the religious Christian and Islamic structures, walking through the mirror lake. So then you see the entrance area of the first courtyard, the courtyard of merchandising. You can see it buying something, the starting of the minaret. And then you see the night, this reflecting pools, this mirror pools on night side. You can walking through the pools. And then on the right hand side, the Islamic gardens, on the left hand side, the courtyard. And then you can see on the back side starting the secret gardens, covering by walls and water walls, and then starting the water left hand side, the water access in the boulevard, right hand side, the secret gardens. On the night time, strong illuminated, the religious festivals will mostly in the nighttime, also of the temperature in North Africa. And then we starting with a new form of the landscape garden. The client come to us and like, oh, we want to have Islamic garden. In the second part, we want to have like Hyde Park in London. I can say we can do in Hyde Park, but we can start something. But is a landscape park regarding Islamic tradition and religious tradition. So we do something like the calligraphy, the Islamic calligraphy, designing footpaths in formal calligraphic structures and forming so a new form of landscape park. We have a slope, we have a height difference of the right-hand side to the left-hand side, which you see the helicopter port, from around 50 meters, so it's a strong slope. And integrated in this loop are this calligraphic structure of these footpaths and forming this new landscape park in this around this backside of the mosque, and with covering with existing palm trees, and we have planted a lot of new trees. So you can see that's the 3 points that has to grow in the next 10 years. I hope so. That's the space will also be in a good condition. But this is a new form of landscape parks, this new form of Hyde Park. That was a presentation about this, what we're doing, how we're doing developing concepts in landscape architecture and urban planning. And the two projects, the Killersberg Park, Future Park in Killersberg by Stuttgart, and the new mosque in Alger is opening 1st November. Maybe you have time to visit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rainer. Thank you. If you could unshare the screen, that would be brilliant. Thank you. Can you unshare?
Which house? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. I'm afraid we're so over time, we don't have time for questions, and it's a shame because there's extraordinary projects, but we really have to move on to Charlotte. Poor Charlotte, who's last but not least. Charlotte, do you want to unmute yourself there?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlotte. You are very patient. We had technical issues at the beginning, and we've gone way over time. And I hope you've got a gin and tonic under your bench,
I'll make sure I'll get my butler ready to get me one
under your desk. Anyway, Charlotte, I'm not going to hold you up any longer. You're based in London and in Wiltshire. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. And you're going to talk to us about one particular project and how you've coped with working during this really difficult period of lockdown.
Yep, I am.
Lovely, lovely. Okay, do you want to share screen and then we'll...
Yeah, so I've got the written one, so... Okay. Can you see now?
Not yet, nothing happening yet.
Sorry about that. Not quite sure why.
Oh. So you've gone to screen share and nothing.
Yeah, I know, and I seem to, okay.
Aha, aha.
Sorry about that, guys.
Yep, it's coming up. Lovely. We can see, yeah, you just need to go to beginning.
Okay, I'll make it quick and go through this quickly.
So
I was asked to look at a project that we were trying to finish during the pandemic. And I thought I'd just start off by saying that obviously there's a lot of challenges as a garden designer or landscape designer, as many of the viewers will know. First of all, there's difficult spaces and how to approach them. There's the local conditions, there's the weather issues, which definitely were an issue in this project. There are the planning issues, if there are any planning issues that can sometimes blight a project. There are the complications that happen during build and the supply of plants. There's budgetary issues. There's tricky clients, we all know about them, but nothing like the unexpected onset of a global pandemic to test one's mettle as a designer and a project manager. We had around 7 active projects in March 2020, including 2 which were literally just about to be completed, with the planting plan for March 2020, can you believe it? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I thought I'd just quickly run through a brief run over some of our projects, so if people don't know our work, you can get an idea of the kind of stuff we do. We have, over the last 15 years, we've done about 250 gardens and landscapes, originally specialising in small gardens. We're quite well known for our design details, for our hard landscaping, bone structure, with rich planting, which you can see in this picture. We're good at dealing with tricky levels, with difficult levels. London has amazingly quite a lot of hills, and so some gardens are built into the hills. And we also work in some quite unusual materials as well. And this is an unusual garden because it's actually, the hard landscaping is in polished concrete, poured polished concrete. This tiny, tiny garden, minuscule garden in London also displays how we can do really good small spaces, and also shows how we use some quite unusual finishes and colours. So this one's in a very, very dark grey. We even painted the house a dark grey as well. It shows also that we're working in sort of quite a contemporary style. After a few years of working quite a lot of hard landscaping and bone structure, we, I suppose, started to do more and more planting over the years. And this one's a good example. It shows our use of limestone slips, if you can see, into the gravel here, and planted rills and quite rich planting. With larger gardens, this one's quite complex. It's got quite a lot of facets to it. The clients wanted an awful lot into a tiny space. They wanted a drum room, which is this dark grey building here, which we designed. They wanted an arbour and a fireplace and water. You can't see it, it's off screen, but they also wanted a secondary dining area. And they also like, we can get some unusual furniture now. This is actually a furniture made by Paola Lenti, which is a Bergamo company, which all the people in Bergamo watching this will know quite well. We do quite a lot of water features. This one is quite interesting. It's in a large rural garden in Oxfordshire. And you'll see there's a surface here on the walls, which is napped flint, which is quite common in quite a lot of parts of the UK where there are chalk uplands, and flint's a really beautiful material to use and sets planting off very well. And this is the same garden. This water feature. The courtyard of this garden is large, and it's a new build house. And this photograph on the left shows the polished concrete again, water feature we put in. We put 3 huge water features in here, and it filled up about half the actual area. It's more like a swimming pool. It's very complex. And then the photo on the right shows a signature element of ours, which we do a lot of gravel planting now. It's becoming more and more something that we like to do because our climate is changing in the UK. We are still getting lots of wet, lots of rain, but we also have quite long periods of drought. So for example, this April was very, very dry. So we do a lot of gravel planting, and this one's quite a contemporary style of gravel planting. This is actually up till around 7 or 8 years ago, we'd not really done much work outside London. This is one of the first jobs we did in southwest England, Somerset. And again, large amounts of gravel planting. This garden was extremely difficult to plant because it was actually a massive concrete block we were building on. It was an old farmyard, and we had some unfortunate areas of the old barns that were actually contaminated as well. So it was quite a challenge to plant this garden. This shows the same garden looking down into the landscape. We worked around the existing pool. We just changed the tiling, so it became a dark grey, nearly black tiling, which is the colour we like to use for pools. And we brought it into the whole design by setting up planting around it that set it off quite well. And just going into a close-up of that, this is interesting. We're very lucky here. We had a ha-ha, an existing ha-ha, which enabled us to have the fields beyond the garden just become part of the borrowed landscape. So it's rather a nice setting. And this is just the little pool house we set up to have by the pool. You almost think you're in the Mediterranean here, Provence or somewhere. It doesn't look very like Somerset, rainy Somerset. So that's just a review of some of our work. Now, just going to talk about this particular project. We had these 2 projects underway. I'm going to pick just this one in Hampshire, which is southeast England, South England, and it was quite a large. It was a farmhouse. The client, we'd actually already done a garden for them in London, and this was a garden of about 2 acres, including a small paddock field. The farmhouse had never been updated, It's needed quite a lot of work inside. It had some good trees and some not very good trees, which we were able to keep. These are 4 shots just showing how it was before, quite traditional finish, you know, broken paving stone, brick, quite hard, not particularly inspirational, has to be said. Sort of semi-circular lawn, which seemed rather pointless. We had quite a lot of challenges to do this. Quite old-fashioned, you know, here it's a close-up of some of the finishes. The only part of the garden that was reasonable was this area here on the right picture on the slide, which was actually a formal parterre or topiary garden with lavender and buxus. But as one of the main parts of the brief was to put a new swimming pool in, I'm afraid this was the one bit that had to go, because that was where the pool really had to go. So we actually had to take that out. This shows the front facade of the house before work started on the house itself. You can see a slightly odd central part of the house. Again, this is, by the way, this is flint and brick by coincidence. The front door was here and the clients wanted the front door in the middle. So there was a bit of work done to the front. You can see the main thing was it looks pretty depressing, and you can see this is another view up. It's not exactly the most beautiful front drive. You can also see it's quite brutal, and you can see it sloping as well, which meant that we were going to have to do some work on that. They were going to put on this side, off picture, they were going to do some work on the outbuildings, the dépendance, and put in a new garage. So that's what we were facing when we started. This is the site survey. This was the front area I showed you just now with the house in the middle. You can see it's part of quite a large site, but this is, I'm just focusing on the main garden areas. And this is the back of the garden with that circular lawn and the parterre area there, and this is the boundary. There are lots of slopes. This is all sloping land. For reasons of, mainly of budget actually, it was decided that we'd do it in 2 phases. So we were going to do the front area here, the drive, and this area here, the south-facing terrace, and some of the planting here, starting last spring, like 2019, and with the aim of finishing that by late summer last year. And then the pool, which was going to go in here, we decided to start last October with the view to finishing it in April or May this year. So this is the design. This is the whole site. This is the site I'm going to concentrate on. This is the front drive. You can see we've put in slats of paving to break the slope up with gravel and gravel planting. The house is in the middle. This is the southern terrace, much softened by much more planting. And then the sloping lawn here, we were going to put in, the plan was to put in metal edging to create more formal terraces down to the orchard. And this was the pool. You can see it's quite a large pool. It's a 15 by 6 meter pool. Vegetable garden here. I'll just go to the next one. You can see it more clearly on the CAD drawing. So here's the front, the new garage, the outbuildings, the southern terrace, south-facing terrace. The rest of the garden is all rolling down here. And then this is the bit we were going to do this year with a gravel terrace and the second terrace up there. So the works last year were fairly straightforward. They created a new front door. This is a before and after shot showing what it looked like while works were going on, and then a picture of how it looked. Actually, this photograph was taken early summer. You can see it's had about sort of 9 months to grow in. It's looking really lovely and soft, and the gravel planting was taken well. There's a close-up of the gravel planting. And this is round on the south terrace, looking out. This is before and after, looking out to the fields beyond. This tree is still there. That tree is still there, though we've taken a few trees out. So you can see we're doing quite traditional planting. This is the same terrace I was just showing you from another angle. This shows some of the materials we were using. We rebuilt the wall in brick because it went with the vernacular of the house. We put sawn Yorkstone steps in here. And that's Yorkstone is one of the surfaces we used throughout. And then this is up the side of the house. These photographs were actually taken earlier this year, but they show the planting we did last year. These shots both show that rather than having, there were stone steps down here with edged in brick, very hard looking. So again, to enable the planting to flow over into the steps, we did gravel planting with mild steel edging. It's not actually corten. I say corten in one of the films, but it's actually mild steel, taking you up to the area up there to the top, which we're going to do this year. That just shows you again the difference, which just a bit of planting makes and a bit of gravel. So those works were completed July, August last year. And then this is a shot of the back of the garden before any work started, just to show you this semicircular lawn I talked about, a bit boring, a bit old-fashioned. And then the pool was going to go off to the left. I'll just bring in the design again. So that shot I just showed you is showing what it was like before, looking up to that side of the house. So the pool is going to go in here. And that was the edging I showed you that went across the gravel path. And that's an axionometric showing it's not actually true to what we did, because for budgetary reasons, two things were taken out of this design, original design. The garden house was going to be too expensive. They originally wanted one. Instead, we put in a small, we called it a beach hut. It is actually literally a beach hut here. And then we took the arbor out and put a tree in here. But basically, fundamentally, that's exactly what we built. And actually, we added a barbecue here as well. So just to remind you that in October 2019, last year, this is what that garden at the back looked like. And that's the bit looking down from the house to the formal part, which looked okay. It was getting a bit tired. The lavender was a bit past its sell-by date. And this is, I'm afraid, where we had to put in a pool right up against the boundary. And it's really quite sloping. So we were going to have to put the pool into a slope, which is quite tricky. That's December 2019. Me taking a photograph back up towards the house with works underway already for the pool installation. This is the shots at more or less the same time. As I said, the pool's about 15 by 5. It doesn't really show you here, but you can see the slope and what we had to build into the slope, and quite tricky construction. By December, we had started to have quite wet weather, but we still decided to get some of the trees in. This is a Zelkova serrata, quite a mature one. We only put 2 mature trees in to go at the end of the pool. So we were all on time to get it all done in time. And that's a photograph in February, very wet. We had a very wet winter this year in the UK. You can see that this is obviously a panoramic photo, so it's slightly bendy. That's showing the whole way from the house through the pool being constructed through to that's where that Zelkova is. And I'll talk about the surfaces in a minute. So looking back towards the house, you can see that that side of the pool is higher to take in the slope going down. We've got a mix of surfaces. So you can see that's one of the main terraces, York stone paving. The steps into the pool are all done in clay pavers, which is really successful, looks really nice, quite difficult to achieve, as you can imagine with those straight edges, and then gravel here. And this is just another shot showing you just how wet it was in February. For this reason, we decided that we would do the planting in the beds, but leave all this lawn for when it had dried out a bit. It really was very wet. And there you can see again, we did put the edging in. This was the terraces we were creating, so we could then put formal lawns going down to the rest of the site. So all on schedule. This is soil prep going on at the end of February, early March. This is around the Zelkova. That's not the beach hut. That's actually the pool technical area. And we were going to put hedging here. So we were all set. We were going to put up about 4,000 plants from 4 different nurseries.
Cercato 4.000 piante da diversi vivai e quindi stavamo avendo un po' di problemi con alcune varietà, poiché era stato un inverno davvero molto freddo.
The style of this part of the garden, the whole of the area around the pool, was much more modern and contemporary than the planting we've done in the front garden. We were going to be using a lot of mass grass planting and perennials. So here we were ready by mid-March with the plants to be delivered, over a period from the 25th of March to the 27th of March, which is a plan to start planting on the Monday, the 30th of March. We were all watching the dreadful images coming out of Spain and Italy over those first few weeks in March, with their hospitals struggling to cope with the surge of infections. But in the UK, we were blissfully continuing with the sort of life as normal. Thank goodness I and some other people have started to arrange for our studio to go to remote working in case there was a lockdown. But we hadn't done it. Indeed, on the 19th of March, 6 of us plus our IT guy were all leaning over each other, breathing viruses, no doubt, and getting our computers ready to go remote. Indeed, that night I fell ill and had a fever, and indeed was later transferred I had picked up the virus. So I did not go back to the office again. And then the following Monday, the 23rd of March, here we have our greatly loved Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, telling the country we're going to go into lockdown. My landscape contractors and I all spent the next few days, in my sick bed, by the way, deciding what to do, whether to cancel the deliveries of the plants and then who was going to pay for that, because the nurseries had already got them ready for us. Who would foot the bill? Was it the client? Was it us? Were we allowed to go on site? It was unclear. There were no clear directions for the building industry or for the landscaping industry of whether we were allowed to do that. What happens if we deliver the plants and then they can't go in the ground? That's £10,000 worth of plants just sitting there. In the end, we decided to take the risk. And we checked that we were allowed to work. We checked that the personnel involved were happy to do it. Obviously, it's easier distancing outside, and as well as setting out the plants and social distancing the plants, we were social distancing the team as well, and we went ahead and did it. We were extra careful. This is showing the plants set out, which we did with the horticulturalists, plants going into the ground here. There were some additional problems because the pool was meant to have been rendered and tiled by then, but because of the bad weather, water had got in under the original tarpaulin and had blown the render. So we had the situation where we had a pool that was half finished with render, which had to be re-rendered. And this tarpaulin had spread right over one of my beds and on the other side as well. So we were planting these plants with great big concrete blocks and tarpaulin in a way. It was a bit of a nightmare, actually. But we managed to do it, and we had to obviously replace a few plants. And as you'll see, this is showing the set out. This is the lower part of the garden with the vegetable beds here. We managed to do it. The other problem was we had actually, thank goodness, agreed to have irrigation in this garden, which is not always what happens in country gardens. Because the clients, it was a second home, it wasn't their main home. So now in lockdown, who's going to water? So I'm just going to show this video, which kind of takes us through, I hope, I'm going to show this video, yeah. Just goes through one of the days just at the end of the planting.
This is our garden in Hampshire that we've been building for the last...
Yeah, it's buffering. Simon?
Is it?
Yeah, can't do it.
2 months. We're unable to finish it completely due to the COVID-19 outbreak. Last 2 days of work.
It's me.
They're going to have to survive on their own for a few months. It's a lovely garden with tiered lawns.
Seems to be okay now.
Being seeded with rocks of buckfish in it. In the middle is a pool, which is filled in tiles, but will be the centerpiece for the garden with mass grass planting around it. This will be a gravel bed, and down there the vegetable bed. To see how garden 95 is future growing here now.
So, sorry that buffered a bit. This shows the garden about a month later, starting to get established, thank goodness. And this shows it another 3.5, 4 weeks later. Again, we managed to almost finish the pool. We had, luckily, fantastic weather in this country, unusual for us. And we were about 2 months behind now. Here we are in June, filling the pool. Thank goodness. And again, you can see the planting is starting to get really established. There's some of the calamagrostis really growing. There you can see the calamagrostis behind here. Not bad for the first year, only 2 months after planting. Our one casualty was that this Zelkova, there were 2 Zelkovas. This one is, we think, failing because there was a leak, a bad leak of one of the taps, which wasn't mended because there was no one around except me going back to check the planting. And so we think that the root structure has got damaged. We're going to keep it in for 1 more year, but that's our one major casualty, and a few other small plants that we've replaced. And here you can see the pool. This is again in June. You can see the transition from the Dutch, well, actually they're Belgian clay pavers down into the dark tiles of the pool. It was a really beautiful pool, actually. And here you can see some more of the gravel planting at the back getting established. And here we just have another, let's hope this one goes well. This is just a film I took in July showing the garden in use. It's starting rather slowly.
I had to fence it close for a long time, but it's starting to get quite established now. This will eventually be the kitchen garden, and as you can see, the pool is greatly enjoyed by the family. This is lovely thing there. Very inviting too. I love to do it. Sit in my hand when working. All the plants here are starting to get really established. This is Zelkova, and the plant of this is grasses. That bed's just about getting established too now. And someone's walking across the lawn. This has not actually been sown properly yet, this lawn. It's still temporary. We weren't able to do it during lockdown. So it's very wild looking grass. It's got quarter-inch steel edging, which helps cope with these big falling levels in this garden. So generally I'm quite happy with how it's looking.
So this image shows the transition between the garden we did last year, which is up to about here, and then this is the new area here. You can see it started, this is taken in July, starting to get established. It was a very delayed, but in the end a successful garden project. We actually finally signed it off in July, only a couple of months late. I've not shown the rest of the garden as there's no time for that, but we did do the orchard and vegetable garden and a natural pond at the end of the site as well. And it's been hugely enjoyed by the family. As I say, a few casualties. Interesting, I think since lockdown, we've noticed a huge upsurge in interest in having gardens made. And we're very lucky in this country, as most people around Europe know. We have a lot of people have private residential gardens, and there's been a lot of people who want to improve their garden, replant, plant vegetables, etc. But as more people choose to work from home for at least some of the week, this trend may continue and augurs well for our industry, I hope. They say that one part of the community that has loved the last 6 months are the family dogs, with only 32% of the UK population back working at the moment in the normal workplace, and the remainder still happy to be working at home. Dogs have been getting a lot of attention. And this particular dog is my client's little terrier, Crumble. She is really happy with her new garden, as I hope my clients are. And that's the end of my presentation.
Charlotte, thank you so much. My goodness me, what a project. I mean, anything that could go wrong did go wrong. And I'd no idea that you'd had COVID. That, goodness me.
I did. Yeah,
Oh,
I did.
congratulations getting that one. That's quite a, and the clients are happy, and I hope you've had a gin and tonic around that pool by now.
I haven't yet, but because every time I go there, I'm actually on a site meeting. But I must say that day when I was filming that in July, the kids were having such a good time. It was about 30 degrees,
Wow.
and all I wanted to do was jump in that pool.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
lovely
Charlotte,
plants. I'm very lucky.
well, thank you very much, and sorry that you were at last and that we were so over time. I mean, it's always difficult when you're in the last spot, and especially when we're over time. So I'm not going to hang around too long. I just want to say thank you so much to Martin, Fergus, Raina and Charlotte for being with us today. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and our interpreters as well for working so hard, because that is the thankless task. And please do join us next week, both on Thursday and Friday. For Thursday, we have 3 Italian designers, and on Friday we have Andrea Cochran, Dan Pearson, Andy Sturgeon and Peter Fink. So please do join us. So before I say goodbye, we're going to finish with a very, very short message from MyPay, our sponsors today. I think they've got a very, very short film to show, just to sort of play us out, as it were. But thank you very much to our speakers, and we hope to see you again for the 10th anniversary of I Maestri del Paesaggio. Thank you so much. Have MyPay gone home? Maybe MyPay, no, they're here. That's it. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye and see you next week. Thank you. Take care.